All right, so we've done a lot of factoring. We've looked at a lot of different methods. And in section 5.6, what we do is we start putting it all together. And so I'll remind you at the beginning of chapter 5, I shared a flowchart with you guys. This is a way to organize all the methods that we learned and kind of gives you a decision zone about when and where to use certain types of techniques. So you begin by literally asking yourself two questions. And the first question you should always ask yourself is, do we have a GCF? If you do, factor it out and then keep going forward. If you don't, you just keep moving forward. So everything begins with the GCF. Once you've established the GCF, you now ask how many terms. And then there's three answers to this. If you have two terms, we're going to use a pattern to factor. If you have a three-term polynomial that is a degree 2, then we're going to use either the AC method or the guess and check. Hopefully by this time you decided which camp you're in. And then if there's 4 or more terms, we're basically using a grouping technique. So there's our flow chart. And what we're going to do throughout this chapter and through a couple videos is just see that flow chart in work. What's been happening up to this point is I showed you a technique, and then all the polynomials fit that technique. We now need to make some decisions about when and where to use them. So that's what the flow chart's for. So let's get busy. So the first one, what I see, first of all, is we ask ourselves, is there a GCF? And when I look at this closely, there is something common between both terms, right? 6 is common and x is common. So my GCF is 6. So what do we do with that? 6 times x, we factor it out or we undistribute it. And then what's left behind, if we factor a 6 out of here, what's left is 2x squared. And then if we factor that from itself, what's left is 1. So upon factoring, right, you can see that we've started the factoring process. We've broken it up into a product. The question is, are we done? So we take a look at what's left, and we see that there's no GCF, so we got it, and I see 2 terms. And so we're now asking ourselves, does that fit one of my patterns? And the only sum we have is a sum of cubes, and this looks like it's a sum of at least squares. So this doesn't fit any of our known patterns, so that tells me that that polynomial is prime, and therefore we're finished. That's as far as I can take the factoring process. So it's just the monomial 6x times the binomial 2x squared plus 1. And then of course what's the beauty about this is you can check your own work, right? Redistribute the 6x. If you get that back, you know you did it right. So we're basically reversing that. In the next one, I apologize as I was writing this up. That's an A right there. All right, so maybe I'll just write it a little nicer. Okay, got ahead of myself. So there's that next one. So again, the first thing we look for is a GCF. So looking around, there's some things that are common, but nothing fits all 4 terms. So no GCF. So next order of business, how many terms do we have? Well, there's 4 terms. So which technique do we use? We group it, right? And then grouping, we usually, in this case, we're grouping around a plus sign, and we usually group the first 2 terms, and we group the last 2 terms, right? So we're grouping, and when we do that, we're now back to the GCF question again. So is there a GCF between those 2 terms? And the answer is yes, it's A. So we'll factor that A out. What's left is x plus y. Plus, between these 2 terms, the GCF is B, and what's left behind is x plus y. Again, there's my plus sign, and we can see on either side of it, there now is another GCF. It's the x plus y. So we factor that out, and what gets left behind is a plus b. And so we were able to factor that polynomial using the grouping technique, right? We broke it up into a product of 2 binomials. And again, you can literally check it by redistributing it. So there we go. So hopefully you're kind of seeing how that flow chart works. It's kind of like a decision zone. The next one, again, we start off by asking ourselves, is there a GCF? And there isn't, right? X is kind of close, 3 is kind of close, but there's no factor that's involved in all 3 terms. So how many terms do we have? We have 3. It is degree 2, and so basically it fits one of these models, right? So it's either going to be an AC model or it's going to be a GNC. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use the AC. For you guessers and checkers, if you want to use the guessing and checking, go for it. But right now, I'll use the AC method. So in this case, my AC is 2 times negative 9. We get a negative 18. So two numbers that multiply up to negative 18, but they're going to add up to 3. Right? So what two numbers do that? And I think if we think real closely about it, I think it's positive 6 and negative 3. Right? So 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. 6 minus the negative 3, or excuse me, minus 3 is 3. So we've got it. So what do we do that? We leave the first and last terms alone, and we rewrite the middle term. Now I have 4 terms, so we're back to grouping. So we group the first two. Be careful, we're grouping around a minus sign, so we change the signs behind it. Okay, and then we're back to the GCF question. So hopefully you see we're cycling through this flow chart over and over again. So a GCF in front looks like it's a 2x. What's left behind is x plus 3. GCF here is 3. What's left behind is x plus 3. There's my minus sign, and to the left and the right I can see there's a common factor of x plus 3. So we factor it out, and what gets left behind is 2x minus 3. So perhaps you guessers and checkers got there a little faster, but we got there, right? There's the binomial times the binomial. There's the product that results in that trinomial. So hopefully, again, you're seeing how this flow chart basically works. Last but not least, for at least this handout or this video, we've got a binomial 64x cubed plus 27y cubed. So first, again, we look for a common factor, and neither one has one, right? There's x is not common, 64 and 27, right? These are a bunch of 2's and 4's, and that's 3's and 9's. So nothing common. So how many terms? There's 2. Does it fit any of my patterns? Well, it's a sum, and I see a bunch of cubes. So I'm thinking it's fitting that pattern right there, the sum of cubes. So we have to figure out what two things are being cubed. And on the front end here, I believe the term is 4x, and on the back end here, I believe it's 3y. And so there's our A and there's our B, and we just start putting into our formula. So let me just rewrite the formula again. It's A plus B, A squared plus B squared, and minus their product in the middle. So there's our formula. So just replace the A with 4x and replace the B with 3y. So we get 4x plus 3y. We're going to square A, that will give us 16x squared. We're going to square B, that's 9y squared. And then we're going to subtract their product. 4x times 3y is 12xy. And there's your factorization. All right, so again, just various different examples, working through the flow chart to organize our techniques, pulling out the proper technique based off of what I'm seeing. You're always asking yourself, is it GCF? How many terms? 2, 3, or 4 drives the technique that we learn. So let me cut this short. We're at 8 minutes already, and we'll just do some more examples working through our flow chart in the next video.